So now adaptations are over. So stimulus is going to be still persistent. So now what happens? The cell is going to undergo cell injury, which is the initial part will be reversible. What is the first organelle which is going to be affected by this injury caused by hypoxia? It is going to be mitochondria. So mitochondria is the one in which we have oxidative phosphorylation taking place, which produces lots of ATP needed for energy production, right? So whenever there is hypoxia, oxidative phosphorylation cannot happen. So what is the first change? The first change happening in a cell injury will be mitochondrial dysfunction. So mitochondria will start to dysfunction. So when mitochondrial dysfunction is happening, what will happen? The ATP production is going to be decreased. So when the ATP production is going to be decreased to 5 to 10 percentage of normalcy. So it has decreased so much that it has reached up to 5 to 10 percentage of normalcy. It is going to affect the endoplasmic reticulum, membrane, and also the nucleus. So in the endoplasmic reticulum, this decreased ATP is going to cause detachment of the ribosomes. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum is there, and on this there is going to the ribosomes which are being attached. So when there is loss of this ATP, these ribosomes are going to be detached from the endoplasmic reticulum. And when detachment of the ribosomes can lead to decrease in the protein synthesis. So without ribosomes, there is not going to be any protein synthesis. So decrease in the protein synthesis is the first change we see. Then in the membrane, what happens is there is going to be failure of this sodium potassium ATPase pump. So sodium potassium ATPase pump is the one which is responsible for holding the potassium in intracellularly. So normally what happens, for 2 potassium to get inside, 3 sodium will get outside of the cell. But when this pump is being failed, because it uses ATP, right? So this pump, without ATP, this pump will fail. So what happens is there is going to be increased sodium influx. So the reverse happens. So increased sodium influx, and there is going to be potassium efflux. Potassium will come out and sodium is going to enter. So when sodium is entering the cell, it is going to take water along with it. Okay. So sodium is going to take water along with it. So when water is entering into the cell, what will happen? The cell will tend to get swollen up. So by osmosis, this water is entering. So it will result in the cellular swelling, which is also called as hydropic change or vacuolar degeneration. So this change is going to be the first morphological change happening in reversible cellular injury. If they ask for the first change, it is going to be mitochondrial dysfunction. Well, if they ask for the first morphological change, it is going to be cellular swelling. So remember, cellular swelling is a reversible change happening. And next, what happens in the membrane is, when the cell is getting swollen up, the microvilli present on the cell membrane is going to be lost. So loss of microvilli will be present, and also there will be formation of myelin figures. So myelin figures are nothing but these are lamellated structures like this, which are going to be composed of phospholipids and calcium. So phospholipids which are present in the membrane will combine with calcium and form these lamellated structures called as myelin figures. Do remember, these myelin figures start to form in the reversible injury, and they can be seen in irreversible injury as well. So it is going to be seen in reversible and irreversible injury, but the number of myelin figures will be more in the irreversible injury. So it is not specific for reversible or reversible, it is present in both, but the number is more in irreversible cell injury. And in the nucleus, what happens as a result of this decreased ATP? So without ATP, there is going to be anaerobic glycolysis, because hypoxia was the cause, right? So without oxygen, anaerobic glycolysis will form. So with anaerobic glycolysis will result in the formation of lactic acid, right? So lactic acid is an acidic product, so it will decrease the pH. So pH is decreased, it can result in the nuclear chromatin clumping. So clumping of the nuclear chromatin will happen. So these are the findings which we see in a reversible cell injury. So let me show the image based questions related to this. So this first image is the myelin figures. Can you appreciate this structure, which is all having this lamellated kind of an onion skin kind of an appearance? So this is nothing but a myelin figure which is composed of phospholipids and calcium. Then the second image is that of a kidney renal tubule actually. So this is a normal renal tubule you see here. And look at these tubules. these tubules, the cells are all quite large and they are having a vacuolated kind of cytoplasm. So this vacuolar or hydropic degeneration is nothing but the cloudy swelling which we were speaking. So this was the first morphological change. So cloudy swelling is nothing but hydropic degeneration seen in reversible injury. Then still the stimulus, which is the injurious stimulus, is persistent. What will happen? The cell will undergo irreversible cell injury. So in irreversible cell injury, you need to remember two damages. So both are M's. So there is going to be severe membrane damage and severe mitochondrial damage. Okay, so when membrane is damaged, what happens is the calcium from outside is going to enter. So there is going to be increased calcium influx, and when calcium is entering into the cell, it is going to activate various enzymes. So enzyme activation will take place. The enzymes like protease, which are going to degrade the proteins present inside the cell. Then phospholipase, it is going to break the phospholipids present in the membrane. And then the endonuclease enzyme will be activated. So endonuclease is an enzyme which is going to break down the nucleus. So nuclear changes will be seen as a result of this calcium influx. So what are the nuclear changes? Starting with pycnosis, karyorrhexis and karyolysis. So pycnosis literally means it is going to be chromatin condensation. So condensed chromatin. So compared to the nucleus of here, if you see, this nucleus is quite small and dark in appearance, right? So this is going to be chromatin condensation, which is called as pycnosis. This is the first change. Then the second change will be karyorrhexis. So here, if you appreciate, the nucleus is all fragmented like this, right? It is all kind of broken up. So this nuclear fragmentation is called as karyorrhexis, which is the second change. Then the third change is the nucleus is all broken up and lost. So in this cell, if you see, there is no nucleus or hardly any material. So kind of a scattered material is present. So loss of this basophilia. So the nucleus is usually basophilic, blue in color. So loss of basophilia or loss of the nucleus is called as karyolysis. Okay, so this is the third change. You have to remember the order of it and the images related to it. It can be asked to, you can be asked to frame it in the correct order also. So these kind of nuclear changes are characteristic of necrosis kind of a cell death. Remember, these nuclear changes, pycnosis, karyorrhexis and karyolysis, happens in a necrosis. Then the second change which happened related to this calcium influx. Okay, so when membrane was damaged, calcium came in. This calcium caused enzyme activation. Other than that, this calcium can also enter into the mitochondria and they can form large amorphous densities. So large amorphous densities can be seen in the mitochondria. So amorphous densities can be seen in reversible cell injury also in the mitochondria, but those will be very small. But large flocculent kind of amorphous densities will be seen in irreversible cell injury. Then the second M, which is there will be severe mitochondrial damage also in irreversible cell injury. So when mitochondria is damaged, just now we saw in reversible cell injury what happened. There is going to be decrease in the production of ATP, and also here also we saw there is going to be lots of calcium influx. So both of these changes is going to result in the membrane damage, and along with the membrane damage, we saw about what is happening to the nucleus also. So all the characteristic features of necrosis will develop. Okay. So calcium influx we saw led to these nuclear changes, and decreased ATP led to the membrane damage. So when membrane is damaged and this kind of nuclear changes happens, it will lead to the form of cell death called as necrosis. While mitochondrial damage can also lead to another kind of cell death called as apoptosis. How? Because mitochondrial pathway, one of the mechanisms of apoptosis is mitochondrial pathway, which is also called as the intrinsic pathway. So that will lead to the form of cell death called as apoptosis. Okay. So reversible cell death can lead to both severe membrane and mitochondrial damage, and severe mitochondrial damage can lead to both necrosis and apoptosis kind of cell death. And remember the nuclear changes which happened in necrosis in the order.